Hello, I'm Brian Bowen, and welcome to Apologetics 101. I guess I need to start this video by apologizing to everybody about why I haven't been producing videos lately. A lot of things have been going on. I started back school. That was one of the main reasons why I haven't produced a video for a while. I have another YouTube channel. I haven't produced a video for a while in there either. I'm trying to get some videos uploaded now. Um, and it's been hectic. Um, my mom passed away recently as well, which is also bad. It caused me to get a little behind my schoolwork, so I'm trying to get caught up there. My mom had a serious stroke. I had to take off work for about a couple weeks, and my mom passed away a week later. We're having the funeral, a graveside service, this coming Friday. If if you're a Christian or anything, I would like to pray for me. Um, and as for this video, of course, at the time of this video is making, I've also been, like I said, been busy trying to catch up schooling because that's caused me to get a little behind my schooling. My professors are working with me; they're great. Liberty University is a great university, great college. I'm trying to finish my bachelor's degree, and I'm paying out of pocket now, so I'm really trying to get caught up with that. And of course, it's been a roller coaster ride, like I said. And now I'm back at work, getting that, and I'm on nights. Also, I've been working on a book that I've been writing as well. Um, that's also cost some time a little bit. In fact, I probably have to apologize to you for something else. This mess over here, all these books and stuff. And I got lots of books on my table because I'm writing a book. Called Faithfully Spoken. It's basically centered around oral cultural background and going through all of these extensive studies in oral cultures and so forth. And I'm writing it basically has to do with the background of the New Testament and that sort of thing. So that's going to be an awesome publication once I get it done. I've been meaning to work on that book for a while. And it's been hard to, with everything going on, to produce videos. And so I do apologize. I'm not producing videos as much as I used to. When I first started this channel, I was producing videos, like 3 or 4 times a week. And then I got to where I was producing it once a week, and I was staying pretty fluent with that. But then lots of stuff come up. And I told you that once I start college back, and I did tell in the previous videos that I was fixing to start college back. Once I start that, the videos might be a little slow coming, and so just have to try to work with me. But I am trying to produce videos. Y'all still on my thoughts. I still want to be able to produce videos. And I think the last one I made was When Skeptics Respond, which I am producing another video on When Skeptics Respond. This one's going to be a little bit unusual. I'll tell you about it more in a minute. But in any given case, I just wanted to be able to inform everybody why I haven't produced videos lately. And, but we're going to be starting the part 2 of my series, When Skeptics Respond, right about now. All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. Like I said, it's been very hard with my mom's passing and so forth. I want to tell you something. I started this series probably the same reason I started this channel. I really want to reach atheists and agnostics with the gospel and talk to them about this kind of stuff and these issues. and also I want to equip other Christians to do the same. On occasion, I will go outside the normal purview of this channel, normal purpose of this channel, and I will maybe discuss a controversial subject matter among Christians, maybe a disputed issue among this kind of group, etc. I don't usually do that. It's not a usual thing for me on this channel, but it does happen on occasion. And this particular series, when Skeptics Respond, was really targeting the responses that I usually get from atheists and agnostics. Since my channel is mainly geared to atheists and agnostics, I tend to get more people responding to me from those groups of people. And so this particular series was mainly about those individuals. But I have recently encountered a new type of skeptic that's different from an atheist. This person that I had this discussion with is not as far as I can tell, he's not an atheist or an agnostic. He doesn't argue like a naturalist, so I don't think he's a naturalist. I don't know whether he calls himself a Christian or not. He never once called himself a Christian in our discussion. I told him in a few times, I told him that I would pray for him, and I would love to see him accept the Lord as his personal Lord and Savior, and he never corrected me on it. You think someone who was saved would say, hey, wait a minute, I'm a Christian, I'm saved, I'm just as saved as you, I just don't agree with you on this particular issue. But he doesn't do that. He never corrects me on it. And this guy, I had this discussion in the comment section. As near as I could tell, he seems to be skeptical of traditional Christian views, particularly on the Bible, inerrancy, reliability of the Bible. I mean, he probably thinks the Bible's reliable, but he doesn't think it means what we think it means. There is a new type of theory that I've encountered. It is called, I think it's called the Bible Code Theory, because that's what I think they're calling it online. This is where you just kind of think that the Bible has some kind of hidden code in it, and they assess this hidden code with the letters in the Hebrew language. And what they do is they targeted the original, how the original language evolved originally, where it evolved from. Like if it evolved from a picto-graphic script, which they call Paleo-Hebrew. I don't know whether or not if scholars actually refer to this as Paleo-Hebrew. Languages evolve, and they often get their stuff from other languages and things like that. And there's all this development that happens with languages over time. It's the same thing with English. It's the same thing with ancient languages. It's the same thing with modern languages. It's just something that happens. Well, originally languages often developed from a pictographic script where there's images and pictures and all this stuff that tries to be representative of words and phrases and statements and that sort of thing. And often they will number it in thousands of it. And of course this is very tedious and very hard to do. So languages, as going through the course of time, gets condensed down, where instead of the pictures representing words and phrases and statements and things like that, it represents the letters that they, the sound, more specifically, the sound that they start with. And this condensed down, so you didn't have to use like a bunch of pictures to express something. You could have the sound, and the sound will be combined with other sounds. It's called acrophonic. And these sounds gets put together to form words. Same way what we see in English. And in fact, all modern languages are like this now. And so that's what happened over time. Now, I came across this video by a scholar by the name of Dr. Michael Brown. He's a very well-noted scholar, very respectable in the field. He has a PhD and as he himself said in the video, he has a PhD in Near Eastern Studies. And he is a superb scholar in this field as well. And he talked about this hidden code theory and everything, and he goes through and showed the evolution of development and why this is erroneous to try to ascribe these kinds of interpretations based upon its original meaning, which would not have been known by Moses at the time he was writing Genesis or any other Old Testament writer. So so these meanings would not have been even known to them. They would just be following the rules of their language of their time. And Michael Brown showed this conclusively. He showed it conclusively. Now, I commented in Michael Brown's video. I made a comment because I wanted to I had like 3 questions, and I wanted some information, and the third one really didn't have anything to do with the video. I'll get in that in a second, but it didn't have nothing to do with the series. The first 2 did. Michael Brown didn't answer me back, but somebody else had responded to it. Apparently, someone who took this Bible code theory, and basically the danger of this theory was that it tries to insert interpretations into the Bible that's not there, that was never intended by the original writer, that you're assuming is there based upon a script that was the original script before it got to the time of Moses, and Moses would not have even been aware of that original meaning. And that original meaning would have been lost to him. He will only be basing it on what he understands of the language at his time. And so me and this person started getting into this discussion, and we kept going back and forth in the comment section, and it basically ended up being very unproductive eventually. In the course of time, he got more desperate with his comments and attacked me toward the end, and was acting very immature-ish. And all these things is going to come out as we look at these replies. But this was something that I've never encountered something this weird. I don't want to say this is going to be the weirdest thing I've ever encountered, because every time I say that, I will discover something else even more strange and more out there. But this right here was so out there. Some of the things he was saying, it was just like he was just inventing stuff that was not at all stated by the text. And when he tried to assert things that as facts, and you check them out, and I'll show you in a minute what I mean, or show you in a little bit what I mean, but when he asserted things as fact and you check them out, they weren't facts at all. In fact, the opposite was true. It's like he never even bothered to fact check himself. He just assumed that was the case. And he tried to argue it. That's interesting. And so I wanted to see whether I wanted to be able to do a video on this, because I think it is important, because ultimately what this leads to is basically someone who thinks that they can put whatever interpretation they want to in the Bible. It makes interpretation subjective instead of objective. Instead of the objective goal of trying to figure out what the original writer meant, you're making it subjective to what the independent interpreter thinks he's talking about or meaning. And what he's talking about and meaning is not what he's saying. He says that, but that's not really what he means. That's not really what is the information that's coming out of that. And Michael Brown makes some very excellent points. I will be linking his video in the I will be linking his video linking his video down below. It's been such a long time since I did this, I forgot what it's called. The description box. I'm going to be linking his video down in the description box down below this video. And also, I'm going to warn you ahead of time. You're going to face something very weird. It's very unusual. I mean, to say it's out there, I'm not over-exaggerating that. It is out there. Out there with the interpretations, there with some of the things he was saying. I mean, it's not just unscholarly. The things that he was saying was just weird and bizarre. And, it was up there with Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code And in fact, I even called it a conspiracy theory more than once. He never corrected me on it, so maybe he thinks it's a conspiracy theory too. Usually, my rule of thumb on conspiracy theories, most of them are probably false. There could be some hint of truth in some of them, but most of them are usually false. That's usually my experience. They usually have the vast majority of them don't even have a grain of truth. But there are a few that might have a little bit of truth to it, or even some of them might be true. I mean, the government could be hiding information from us. There could be stuff that they're not telling us, or that they perceive if this gets out, that's matter of national security and so forth. There are things like that. But I'm not one of those people that is going to be gullible and just believe whatever I'm told. And I'm a hard cookie to sell anything to, but clearly the people that advocate this theory are doing so gullibly. They are being gullible. And I hate to use that word, but it's true. They are being gullible. And I think this theory poses a real danger to proper interpretation of the Bible. Now, granted, most people and most scholars, in fact, I think all of us scholars on it, don't really take this theory. So it's not something that is going to be a real, oh no, we're really worried that this is going to take over viewpoints. No. But it is something that is growing on the internet, and there are people that believe it. It's false. It's wrong. And let me explain to you real quick before I jump into the comment section. I want to explain why it's wrong. Ultimately, Moses would not have been known of whatever original pictographic meaning or whatever meaning it might have carried on. Actually, it didn't even carry the meaning on from its original pictographic meaning. It would have not have been known by Moses. Moses will only know the rules of his language when he was writing. Same thing is true for the rest of the Old Testament writers. They will only know the rules of that language. They will only know these letters as sounds, not as pictographical representations, because they no longer carry those meanings anymore. They will only know them as sounds, and they will put them together in formal words, and they will use the rules of their language to convey this information, convey their message, and tell you about stuff. Okay? And so it is illogical to assume that Moses would have meant something else other than what he is writing when he would not even been aware of that original pictographical meaning that it could have carried on early on in the language or early on in no language. Technically speaking, the Hebrew language would be completely separate from any pictographic language. That would be, let's assume, for example, that the Hebrews originally used that pictographical language. That language would have been a separate language from the language that Moses is writing in. It would be similar, in the sense that, it's used by the same group of people maybe, but it would not be the same language because it would have different rules of syntax, different rules of grammar. Actually, pictographic language wouldn't even have rules of grammar or syntax because it's not alphabetical. But this language is alphabetical. It has rules of syntax. It has rules of grammar. It has rules of pronunciation, etc. And so that is what the writers of the Old Testament are going to go by. They're not going to go by a meaning that it no longer carries. In fact, that's actually a word study fallacy. We'll see that toward the end of this discussion. I believe D.A. Carson referred to it as semantic obsolescence, meaning it's semantically obsolete because the language no longer carries that meaning for what he said carried the meaning for the words, but you could probably combine that or apply that to pictographic. The letters no longer carry the meanings that they would have carried in their original sense when they were originally created that way, before they were letters, before they were just simply sounds, etc. So we're going to get started with this, and we're going to dive right in. All right. You see here. Okay, this is what I originally wrote to Dr. Brown. He never replies back to this. Okay, the first two questions I had pertaining to pictographic script. Third one didn't. I'm just going to read the first two. The third one's not really relevant. I want to know if this was really a type of Hebrew they originally used and spoken or wrote in. All right, I mentioned that, and it said the second question I have is if it's representative of the original Hebrew, then why don't any books that I have mentioned it? Probably because it's not even, like I said, it's like a separate language, pretty much. Even if it's used by the same group of people, it would still be a separate language because now we're dealing with an alphabetic language. All right, but he doesn't respond back to me. This person does. His YouTube designation is Trusted Living. At first, when I first heard the YouTube designation, I thought it was a woman that I was talking to. In fact, throughout the whole thing, I wasn't sure if it was a woman or a guy. But I thought maybe it was a woman. And then when I went to his channel after we got done with our debate, I found out it was a guy that's doing this. So this is a guy behind this name. All right. Okay, he responds partly toward Brown, and he also responds partly to me. So you'll see this. Because this is one's for Dr. Brown. He says, "You are so funny, you scramble around in panic so people won't try to discover the truth." I watched the video. He wasn't in panic at all. Claiming that gathered letters have no other meanings than as words. Then you end your message with the word God that was used as replacement for many other Hebrew and Greek words in the Bible. He's assuming his conclusion there. So what you are saying is people have to listen to the dictator's diction experts. No, he's saying that the evidence and the facts support it, and that the people that are experts in those areas agree as they've studied it. See, we are back at the Tower of Babel again, where dictators are dividing the language. All right. He responds to me because I responded to I asked the question of Dr. Brown, and he said Bereshith does have a photographic meaning. I don't know why he says photographic meaning. My guess is he's talking about pictographic. It's not really called photographic. But he says it has a photographic meaning, is what he says here. It would be foolish to say otherwise. It's actually foolish to say that, but in Hebrew language, names denote the character of what is being narrated. No. In a minute, I'm going to target this. It says, all the names, in fact, all the nouns have photographic meaning. Bereshith equals house of Ra. Forced food work covenant. I told you this was going to get weird. That book describes how the society of Egypt and all places it colorized and conquered had their societies groomed to pay taxes. I'm sorry, I have to laugh at this. I mean, this is serious. I shouldn't even be laughing. I just can't help it. That it's such nonsense that's being expressed here that it's hard not to keep yourself from laughing at it. But it's serious because of what it's doing. It's as far as trying to feed interpretations into the Bible, eisegetically, not exegetically. We'll get into that later too, where he commits eisegesis and he's trying to insert interpretation and it's not there. All right. But no, first of all, names have, well, let me go and tell you what I say, because I actually mentioned this in there. Actually, I might have mentioned it. Yeah, I mentioned it down here about the names. Names have, names do have meanings in Hebrew, where names might mean something, but that don't mean that they're, they originate from some pictographic. No, that's not. That has nothing to do with it. In ancient times, it was very commonplace to name somebody after something. We do it today, like Sophia means wisdom, or Bel or Bella means beautiful, because it comes from languages that mean those things. And so we get those names and they represent something, but that doesn't mean that the name itself is symbolic for something. I mean, these people actually exist. They're just being named after things that mean something, and this happens a lot in the Old Testament. Abraham, father of many nations, father of the multitude. You got Jacob, whose name meant deceiver. His name was changed by God to Israel, which means prince. So you kind of can see this theme going on throughout the Bible. It's just a way of naming individuals after things, and we do this practice today. They just did it a lot in ancient times. It's just an ancient practice. Well, of course, he would try to read that as, oh, well, that just retaining its pictograph. No, it doesn't. Because even if you trace those letters and go through the pictograph, it would not even mean what, it's understood. That's understood according to the rules of the language and how it's translated in that language at the time of its being written. All right. Okay, I said, he says, that, and I replied, did you not watch the above video by Dr. Brown? He said this is a fallacy, and he does. After researching it some more, I agree with him. The letters would carry different ways to understand them later on. Strange. Why did you choose to reply to me instead of Dr. Brown? Everything you just said was everything he was against in the above video. Anyhow, there is no secret code in Genesis nor any other part of the Bible. Blessings. This was his response. Dr. Brown has an agenda, as he is frightened people will discover the truth if they learn how to translate the names in the ancient scriptures. Language, let me explain something. Dr. Brown, I've seen him in, Dr. Michael Brown, I've seen him in debates, in discussions. This guy's a superb debater. He's a superb scholar. I don't always agree with everything that Dr. Brown says or anything. No two people don't agree exactly alike. But I do think that he's an excellent scholar, and I have lots of respect for his scholarship. So I do not think that Dr. Michael Brown is really shaking in his boots or anything like that. If he's afraid at all, he's afraid of people that's going to accept something that is false, that is obviously false, that can be easily demonstratable as false, and the people that are believing this conspiracy theory is eisegetically inserting made up interpretations into the Bible and making it their own. And the interpretations are subjective. They're subjective interpretations. All right. So, and as far as Dr. Brown having an agenda, well, yeah, he has that agenda. He has an agenda trying to spread the gospel and the truth, and he wants people to believe the truth, just like me. I have an agenda. I want people to believe the truth. But this guy has an agenda too, because he doesn't want people to believe the truth. He doesn't want people to believe, he wants people to believe whatever interpretations they decide to put on the Bible. Instead of the Bible telling them what to believe and what to think and what to and how things really were, he wants to say, I want to come up with my own interpretations, my own picture of how I think things are to be, and I'm going to insert that back into the Bible. And he thinks he's doing it the right way, but he's not. So, yeah, he has an agenda. All right. Now, as we continue on, I should have probably brought this up before. As we continue on, you're going to see this guy get more desperate. He's going to start out, I wouldn't exactly call him totally reasonable, but he's not, in a plea of desperation yet. But eventually, as we're going into conversations, I'm constantly proving him wrong. I'm constantly demonstrating it. I'm constantly citing sources. I'm constantly devoting fact. I'm constantly responding in adequate ways that proves him wrong. And as such, he's going to get closer and closer. When he gets to his last response, you're going to see the desperation come out. You're going to see that he is very desperate at this point because he has been demonstrated to be wrong. He knows that people that are reading these comments are going to know that I have won the debate. Now, of course, it was more than winning the debate. I wasn't focused just on winning the debate. My goal was to teach the truth because I think this is a very dangerous theory that has you creating, not figuring out, creating interpretations and inserting them eisegetically back into the Bible. And that's a serious problem. You know, like I said, the stuff he comes out with is so out there, it's laughable, but it's serious at the same time. Because there are people like him that really believe this. All right. Okay, language was an evolutionary process. Languages do change over time, but that's not the point. When Moses wrote Genesis, he would have wrote it according to what he understood about the language at the time of him writing it. He's not going to insert a earlier meaning into it. Like I said, later on I will mention this. This is actually a word study fallacy that he's making here. But yeah, language do go through evolutionary process. I agree. But that doesn't mean that the earlier meaning that's no longer applicable should be applied when Moses himself wouldn't apply it when he was writing. So the key to understanding is how the language was understood way back when the worlds / names were created. Yeah, and those names were created during the time when this was acrophonic language, when the alphabet had sounds to it, and these sounds were put together to form these words. The original picto-graphic language, it would have represented a word, or it could represent a number of words. It could represent a statement, a phrase, etc. And that's why it was thousands and thousands of pictograms that would have represented these things. In an acrophonic language, where each letter represents a sound, these sounds are put together to form words, and then it's put together to form sentences based on the rules of grammar and syntax that language has. And this will be according to the way Moses would have wrote Genesis, same way Joshua wrote the book of Joshua, the same way you expect David to write Psalms, and the same way that Isaiah and Daniel would have wrote their works, and Malachi, and of course, in the New Testament, the same thing. They would have wrote according to the language, the rules of that language, and the wording and terminology of that language, the words that they would have used in that language, and that's how they would have wrote it. They would not had an earlier meaning that was no longer applicable on their mind when they were doing that. All right. He says, so the key to understanding how the language is understood is to go back when words and names were created. No. Because when you go back to when words were created, it would have been the language that they understand, not an earlier development of those letters. Originally. You do know Moses didn't write the Torah. We get in this subject matter too. Of course, the Torah is representing what we call the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Mosaic Law. I don't know whether he takes the documentary hypothesis or not. He never says it. I do mention it later on. And he never denies it nor affirms it. But he does deny Mosaic authorship of the Torah, so I gave him a few evidence. There's a lot more evidence, but I was working this off of the top of my head at the time. But I did show that there was evidence that the writer understood Egypt was in knew Egyptian belief, customs, culture, etc., and geography, because he was living in that time. Someone writing a long time afterwards that was not even in Egypt would not have had that knowledge or understanding. Now, this is what he says. Such as Adam First to enter organization. Told you this was going to be weird. There's going to be some weird interpretations. Adam actually doesn't mean first at all, actually. Adam in Hebrew, Adam, actually means man in Hebrew. Adam means man in Hebrew. That's what it means. It does not mean first. It certainly don't mean organization. Where does he get this organization for? I have no idea. But that's what he says. All right. Does that not describe what Adam was? A first organization? No, it doesn't. Dr. Brown is just threatened by people that will discover what he teaches is childish nonsense. I don't think Dr. Brown is threatened by you at all. I'm not threatened by you. He raises this up for both me and Dr. Brown, and neither one of us is threatened by him. I demonstrated over and over and over and over again. You're going to see that as we're continuing. But that he was just wrong about what he was claiming. But no, Dr. Brown isn't threatened by him. We're threatened by the fact that something false is being believed by others, and they're getting other people to believe something that's false. And it's so obviously so. I mean, I understand that most people aren't trained in Hebrew. I mean, I study Hebrew, I study Greek, and most people don't appear to have that kind of knowledge in Hebrew and Greek. My pastor, my church, he's very good at Greek, but he seems to stay away from Hebrew most of the time. Most people don't like Hebrew because it's a hard language to study, but I study it, and so I can read Hebrew. And well, there's a lot of other people out there that cannot read Hebrew. Doesn't want to read Hebrew. I told this guy several times he needs to read Hebrew. He needs to study the language of Hebrew if he wants to try to have a debate with us. And he refused to do that. He refused to even go back. He don't even check out any of his facts. All right, here's me responding to him. I would have to say I have to respectfully disagree with that. First, Bereshith is an inseparable preposition in front of it, ba, pronounced ba, and this means in or with. Those are the prepositions it means. Now he will try to, he does this all the way, after I said this, he does all the way to the end, to the very last thing he writes. He will jump on this thinking that I'm agreeing in some inconsistent, hypocritical manner that this must have a pictographical meaning, except if pictographical meaning was not a preposition. In fact, the bet there, the bet, it was originally pictographically a house, I believe, what Dr. Brown said in the video. So that doesn't mean in, it doesn't mean with. These are nuanced translations, okay, that only happens when certain letters are prefixed as an inseparable preposition. It's a nuanced translation of it, okay, and it happened in this language, not how it was originally understood and that letter came from, but rather this language. And I tried to explain this to him over and over and over and over and over again. I tried to explain this to him. But he still kept assuming that this represented what the original pictographical understanding of that letter means, which it didn't. Because even the pictographic version of it doesn't mean the prepositions that it would come to mean when and only when it's prefixed as a inseparable preposition. And of course, and I mentioned this later, the three prepositions in Hebrew. There is independent prepositions, which work very much like our regular prepositions are today, where they're just like a separate word as a preposition. There's the makiaf preposition, which is basically the preposition that has a word that's a preposition in front of a noun, and or you can reverse that because Hebrew reads backwards. So the preposition and the noun, and there'll be like a little dash, little hyphen in between that, and that's called a makiaf preposition. And then, of course, you got a what's called a inseparable preposition, which is a letter that's prefixed to it that will have a nuanced translation based on how the word is used in that particular context. In this case, it's temporal. It's what's called the temporal clause. That's why you translate, or in the case of Bereshith, that's why you translate Bereshith as is in the beginning. And that's how you would translate that. Reshith is the Hebrew word for beginning. All right, so that's what it goes down to. But he'll jump on that and assume pictographical meaning. And he'll do this all the way up until the end of the debate at that point. Because he's assuming that I'm somehow admitting to pictographical meaning, when in fact I'm not, because the original pictographical meaning, by the way, that bet comes from, originally was a house, from what Dr. Brown said. Doesn't mean these prepositions at all. So yeah. Okay, and I said Reshith, supposed to be in quotation there. Reshith is no more a name than bet in front of it. This word means in the beginning. I'm talking about Bereshith means in the beginning. Reshith means beginning in Hebrew. And it is a temporal clause, like I just said, used before the noun. It is a fallacy in word study to take the original meaning of letters, insert them into a word's later meaning, when that specific word used by the specific writer in a specific context with a specific intent to his message. In other words, he's not originally using it that way. Secondly, Moses wrote the Torah. Both the internal evidence and external evidence supports this. Adam couldn't have written, since even the book of Genesis, I think I assumed that he was saying Adam wrote he will later say no, he wasn't saying Adam wrote it, was written long after he had lived. In addition to that, there is strong internal evidence that the writer was way too familiar with Egypt to have not been there. Yet Adam was never in Egypt. This demonstrates how fantastical this conspiracy theory is. There is no secret code in Genesis, nor any other part of the Bible. Thirdly, yes, he does have an agenda, and so do you, but that doesn't make him wrong. In the above excerpt he left behind above the comments, he tells us his agenda, truth. In other words, truth is his agenda. Dr. Brown isn't teaching childish nonsense. Take some classes in Hebrew. This is the first time I tell him this. It is fallacious to insert meanings that no longer exist into later words. Think of how much our language has changed over time. The word suffer used to mean hinder, but now it means torment. I'm thinking of the King James Bible where it says suffer not the little children. It means hinder not. It doesn't mean torment. But today, suffer means torment. Now, he said earlier that languages change over time. Yeah, they do. But they change in a way that their meanings change how people are understanding them. So he's not getting that. Sometimes when I tell people that I'm a Christian apologist, I often find myself having to explain the word apologetics, because some people think I'm apologizing for what I believe, but the word apology has changed over time. Languages do change. Now understand something, he misunderstood that later and assumed, actually he assumed the exact opposite of what I'm trying to say, because he said, well, go ahead and keep apologizing for what you believe. No. Apologetics has a double meaning, and we kind of brought that back into our culture. But the way apology is typically used now is to try to apologize for something. Christian apologetics, though, is going more about its historical root. So it winds up having a double meaning. And I wasn't arguing against the idea that words could have multiple meanings. That's true of any language. The reality, though, is that they're claiming, okay, the origin of these letters originate from pictographic scripts, and these pictographic scripts eventually got condensed down to sounds, where the original meaning was not intended by the writer. They would have used the what was true of their language at the time. And so they're not inserting these original meanings that they had no idea about into the Bible. And he misunderstands that. And in fact, he misunderstands that all the way through this entire debate. All right, languages do change, but this is why you shouldn't take a letter out of a completely different historical context and apply it to much more later one. Lastly, what in the world? Adam in Hebrew means literally man, or Adam, literally means man, not first, nor organization. This is the first time I ever encountered this. This is why I said, what in the world? I've never encountered this. This was a fantastical interpretation. I mean, I've debated and discussed issues with people that are part of cults. I've discussed issues with atheists, agnostics, and I'm even used to atheists talking off the top of their heads and just bringing up responses before, without ever even knowing what the world they were talking about. I've had people do that. In fact, what I was originally going to do with the next part of When Skeptics Respond, I was going to basically do a series of comments that I had done where one of the two people that I would be responding to did that, talked off the top of their head. But this is out there. This is like aliens had my baby out there. This is really weird. This is like front page of the National Enquirer weird. And I've never encountered that before. Do us all a favor and study Hebrew. This is the second time I brought it up. I think I brought it up early in this same reply. So this is twice I've said in this reply. Every time you utter one of your conspiracy theories, you are sounding more and more out there. I'm sorry we can't agree, but my goal is always truth. Thanks for the reply. Blessings. Okay, he comes back. All right. See that? You just used a pictographic meaning with the letter bet. Oh no. And he jumps on this the entire time for the rest of the debate. Again, as I already explained this, this was an inseparable proposition. And I'll explain it again in several other posts, so I'm not going to go over that again. But obviously this has nothing to do with pictographic meaning at all. Actually, you showed two symbolic meanings of the letter, which is the picture of a tent footprint. No. That's that's probably a reference to cuneiform, which is strange because that comes later, not in the original, the original evolutionary development. But that would have nothing. What's the 10 footprint have anything to do with in or with? Pretty ironic for you. Then the root word reshith. You actually transliterate that as reshit. That's how you transliterate it. Some people do pronounce reshith as reshit, but the dagesh lene, a little dot there in the ta, it's in the last letter of the word is missing, and so it winds up being th. But I think that Michael Brown actually even pronounced it as reshit. So it varies. Probably depends on which Hebrew, the way in which he's taught Hebrew. If he's taught it to say reshit, he might pronounce it as reshit. I pronounce it as reshit because the way I was taught was that if it's certain letters, including the ta, when it's missing the dagesh lene, the little dot in the center, it winds up having a softer sound. The softer sound of ta was the, like the th in thin. So that's why you pronounce it as reshith. When I spelled out in the thing, I was saying it's pronounced that way, not transliterated that way. Transliteration is reshit. That's how it's transliterated. All right. In the 1890 Strong's Hebrew Dictionary, this is the Strong's Concordance he's using, which, like Dr. James White says, is not a scholarly source. But he's using it as one. All right. Found in S word, a meaning of shows a meaning of first, which certainly is synonymous with the word beginning, but also includes as an example specifically first fruits. No. And you know something really weird? In order to, what is the Strong's Concordance going to be based on in terms of the Greek and Hebrew? How it's understood by the original writer of Scripture. So Moses writing it and representing these words based on the information on how it's understood in that language. This is not pictographical language. So he just winds up countering himself by even going to the Hebrew and Greek dictionary, which would be based on how it's understood in the language of Moses. But this would not be the case because this is not really a scholarly source, and it's probably not the closest to translate it as first. The Hebrew word Adam actually means man. So for intensive purposes, plus he also could be doing what's called unwarranted adaptation of a semantic field. This is another word study fallacy. And this is where you kind of take all the possible meanings of a word, that's called a word semantic field, and you bring it to a given context. And so he could be trying to do that. But either way, it actually doesn't mean first. So for intensive purposes, a modern understanding of Bereshit could be house of first fruits, which makes no sense in the context since the whole passage is talking about creation of the entire universe. And that certainly would not be how Moses would originally understood it. But that is just a watered down version of a legitimate translation that I provided. It's watered down, all right. Eisegetically in every way. I never stated that the group name Adam, you know, the funny thing is Adam is actually singular. Adam wrote the Torah, but certainly there is a lot courts of scholarly opinion that supports the book was certainly not written by Moses. Alright. I talk about this a little bit later. But, first of all, that's an appeal to authority fallacy. The fact that there's scholars that say it one way or the other doesn't make it true or false. You'd have to look at the evidence the same. So that's appeal to authority, obviously. Second of all, it's not even the majority consensus anymore, really. Most scholars, from what I understand, has rejected the documentary hypothesis because it doesn't really tell us anything useful about the ancient world. So it's not really a popular theory like it used to be. It used to be a very popular theory, but it's not very popular anymore. You never even hear non-Christian scholars even talking about it anymore. So this is just incorrect to begin with, and it's an appeal to authority fallacy. What's that got to do with whether Moses did? I gave him evidence that Moses wrote it, and he comes back with, well, there's some people that disagree with you. Okay, they're wrong. Simple put. But let's say they were for the sake of examination. In my understanding of how to properly translate the scriptures, the names tell the basic story of their character, and all everyone had to do was the names in order to come up with the elaborate stories. So basically saying the names were symbolic. The names were symbolic for something, and then that was part of the storytelling. No. Name any scholars. I'll challenge you, if you watch this video, name any scholars that think, and I don't mean some people that are writing on this this theory that they just really like. I'm talking about genuine, legitimate, well-respected scholars who specialize in ancient languages, to specialize in this in the Old Testament or New Testament, that would argue that these names are symbolic of some kind of story that the writer is telling, rather than real people. Now, there might be non-Christian scholars that don't think that those people even exist because they don't believe the Bible, whatever the case may be. But they wouldn't argue that they are using those names symbolically to represent stories. They wouldn't argue that. Even someone like Bart Ehrman would not argue something like that. I don't even think Richard Carrier, who's a mythicist, would even argue something like that. It's out there. It is that out there. All right. In your world, in my world, we don't live on two separate planets, I promise you. But it might seem that way because you're talking gibberish half the time, but no. It says, in your world, Moses would have had to have special guidance to write the stories in order for them to be accurate. Well, he don't actually have to have special guidance to be accurate. He could actually be inaccurate anyhow. Like if he witnessed something, or if God appeared to him when he gave him the law and told him, that he created the world, and he did, and this is how long he did it in, and Exodus 20. I mean, he tells him that. So he didn't have to have special guidance other than, God showing up and explaining things to him. And he could have been accurate anyhow. But if you're talking about doctrine of inspiration, then I think that he was inspired. I think the words he wrote was inspired. The Bible tells us the scripture is inspired. Sometimes people get that confused and think, oh, well, the writer is inspired. It might be a little bit weird to sit there and say the writer is inspired, because the text that we get that from is in First Timothy 3:15, or 3:16, where Paul says all Scripture is given by, I think the King James says all Scripture is given by inspiration of God. That's where we get the word inspired from. But the word inspiration is theosmisos, and it means, in Greek, it means literally God breathed. And it says all Scripture. It doesn't say all writers of Scripture. It says all Scripture. It is really what they wrote that is inspired, not the writer itself. The writer can be wrong about other things outside of the Bible and so forth. But it is their words that or what they're saying in the Scriptures that's inspired. And that's how it's understood. He goes further. He says, but hey, in your world, that's how Moses, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, amongst many others, became defied and gods in and of themselves. No Christian that I am aware of, in fact, I think zero Christians would say that they're represented, that they are gods in and of themselves. When do we ever say that? That's not in my world at all. Certainly, over and over again in Scripture, they are mentioned to be Elohim everywhere you find written the God of Abraham, Isaac, and the God of Jacob. This is going to be fun. If written in modern English with the religious reflection of the day, would be properly, in parentheses, you put God Abraham, God Isaac, God Jacob, as there are absolutely no other words to denote even the word of. Alrighty then. Totally false. Alright. Nowhere in the Bible does it describe these people as Elohim. Ever. That's not how you translate that. You don't translate it God Abraham, God Isaac, God Jacob. Nope. He says, oh, there's no of, and that's false too. In Hebrew, and I'll say this next time I respond back, because it was just weird. I mean, this is just bizarre. I study Hebrew and I know about this stuff. So when someone like this comes along and says all this stuff that you know is not true, it sounds like gibberish to you. And so this stuff was starting to come out to me almost like gibberish, like he's just talking, babbling on about things that didn't make any sense. Blah, 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 blah. It didn't make any sense. Okay, in Hebrew, there is I guess what you would consider, like in Greek, they have a possessive case called genitive. In Hebrew, they have what's called a constraint chain. And I'll explain this next time around. Constraint chain uses constraint nouns and absolute noun, and I believe it takes the form of the absolute noun as far as the number and that sort of thing, and whether it's singular or masculine or feminine and so forth, and it's kind of, so that way it kind of all agrees with each other, and you actually translate this as of. And if you were being literal with the translation, you translate it as of every single time. It'd be kind of like you saying the God of Isaac, of Jacob, of Abraham, etc. You would use of every single time you translate it that way. And that's actually Hebrew. That's the rules of Hebrew grammar. So this claim that there's no of in Hebrew, where's he getting that? He does not know Hebrew at all, because they have what's called a constraint chain. And this is their version of a genitive case. Like there's a genitive case in Greek where it's possessive, where you're possessing something, or kind of a belonging to kind of thing. And you translate that as of. Like if I wanted to say the Spirit of God, I might say tu theou ha pneumatos, the Spirit of God. The God is in the genitive case. That's the omicron, the upsilon diphthong there. And so it would be like, and of course the article agrees with the noun, in this case the genitive case, so it would be like tu theou ha pneumatos, the Spirit of God. And that's how you would say that in Greek. In Hebrew, you'd use a constraint chain. And it's like a chain. It's got, like I said, constraint nouns, and it's got absolute noun. And I mentioned this in my next thing. I will explain it a little bit more there, but I actually mentioned that. So this is completely inaccurate. Like I said, he does not know Hebrew. This demonstrated he does not know Hebrew. All right. He goes further. He starts to cite somebody. I'm guessing he's citing somebody that supports this theory. He says, S-word shows... I've never heard this person, by the way. So as far as I know, this is not a reputable scholar that he's quoting. S-word shows the Hebrew word Elohim to be the underlying word translated as God. But in the Leningrad Codex... But in the Leningrad Codex, the words are Eli, and I don't even know how to pronounce these because this is not Hebrew, respectively. All right. No, not. All right. I demonstrated this by going directly to the Leningrad Codex. Now, let me explain the Leningrad Codex. It's basically, it's not the earliest that we have on anything from Genesis, but it is the earliest that we have on Genesis 1:1. I'm making a video! But it is the earliest that we have on Genesis 1:1. And as a result, I went back and I actually found this, because you can actually look at this codex on the internet. This codex is online, and sure enough, Genesis 1:1 has Elohim. Let me show you real quickly, because I'm going to go back to this later too. This is the Leningrad Codex. Alright? Okay, this is Genesis 1:1. Okay? You see Bereshith bara Elohim. There's Elohim right there. Eighth, Hashamayim, Wa'ath, Haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. These are direct object makers. Eighth and Wa'ath, and this is a conjunction right here. And this right here, Haaretz, means the earth. All right. So in the beginning, God created this direct object, heavens and the earth, the heavens and the earth. Okay, that's in the Leningrad Codex. This, you can find this online. Have this site. It's blueletterbible.org. You can find this on there. All right. So he was completely wrong. All right. All right. Because he says it's not Elohim in the Leningrad Codex, which is not true. Nonetheless, there is a Hebrew word, God, and it was replaced by the word Gad, which is not true. Where's he getting his facts from? He's not telling us. So did you ever wonder why the Bible translators had an affinity for Gad? Which I don't even know who Gad is. I have to look that up. I have no idea who that is. But the Bible, the fact that the Bible, and I mentioned this as well, mentioned lots of names and lords, multitude of times. Adam's mentioned a lot. Abraham's mentioned a lot. Moses mentioned a lot. Jacob's mentioned a lot. David's mentioned a lot. That doesn't mean that somehow that the Bible writers are somehow trying to, say these people are gods or it's just weird. I told you this is going to get weird. And I'm going to warn you ahead of time, it's going to get weirder. Don't think that by the end of this debate they had witness. I would love to tell you that this guy progressed in his thinking closer we got to the end. My last video that I did on when Skeptics Respond, you remember that that one of the guys that I viewed on the comment section, he progressed in his thinking. And by progressing in thinking, I don't mean he necessarily took everything that I said or suddenly become a Christian. That would have been great. But that's not what I mean when I say progressing what in his thoughts. I mean, he moved ahead with it, and he was willing to sit there and say, wow, that was pretty good. And he didn't sit there and think that somehow he went backwards in his thinking, in his learning, in his willing to be open-minded. He didn't go backwards like this. This guy went backwards. And the more I demonstrated my position, the more facts that I threw out, the more sources that I went to, the more desperate he became. And you'll see that in the replies. All right. Nonetheless, there is a Hebrew word, God, to place the word Gad. No. So, did you ever wonder why the Bible translated Gad? Obviously, fallacious reasoning. Carry on apologizing. This is the part where he misunderstood what I said before. Carry on apologizing for the people of the past, as they certainly did very much wrong. In other words, he has the correct interpretation, and Moses made up everything else. Which makes no sense. And of course, he misunderstood what he said. I already dealt with this. He misunderstood what I meant there. But let's not forget the strong evidence. The original pictographs that were changed into Hebrew letters originated from Egypt. Like that changes anything, even if that was the case. And by the way, my understanding, I think from Dr. Brown, I think he said that that Hebrew actually came from Assyrian, if I understood him correctly in his video. And so I don't know where you're getting the Egypt part from, so I'm not sure. I don't think that Hebrew originated from Egypt, especially since they were already speaking Hebrew when the Jews first came to Egypt. So that doesn't make any sense either. But of course, they did, as it was the Egyptians that controlled the Canaanites through their imposed religion. Where is he getting this stuff from? It's like he's reading it out of a fairy tale or something. You do know Canaanite is a Greek word for Canaanite slave, correct? This is incorrect. It's actually, and besides, why would it matter if there's the Greek word for Canaanite? The Canaanite is a Semitic word and originated as a Semitic word. All right. Of course, I responded to him. No, wait a minute. This is him responding to something else too. All right, let's read that. I also see you know that the writers of the Bible use two different meanings for the phrase Bereshith. When did they ever use that? Okay, Reshith is the word for beginning. Ba is just the inseparable preposition adds to it. So where do they use a separate meaning for that? All right. He goes further. He goes, one as the title Genesis and one phrase in the beginning. Wow. Let me finish the sentence first before I respond. But of course, they recognized Bereshith was a phrase and hence the dilemma the deniers are in today. It's not a phrase. It's actually a noun. And it's connected to a inseparable preposition, ba. So it's not specifically the way the word normally is. The word normally is reshith, beginning. Ba, the bet is added to it as an inseparable preposition. And when this happens, it puts that nuanced translation on it because it's a preposition that's being added to the word. So instead of translating it as beginning, you translate it as in the beginning. All right, that's what happened. Genesis, he says, see, they used a different word for beginning. The Greek or the Hebrew didn't use that word. We get the word, this is common knowledge, and I put this in the next one too when I responded. Excuse me. I put this in there. I said this was common knowledge. Genesis actually comes from the title of the first book of the Bible from the Greek Septuagint. The Septuagint is the one with the title, or it's Genesis in Greek. Okay, we pronounce it Genesis. All right, that was the Greek word for the first book of the Bible. The first book of the Bible was in the Hebrew scriptures, which they call the Tanakh. In this case, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Mosaic law. The first 5 books, Torah just means law in Hebrew. Pentateuch is what Christians usually call it, and that means 5 scrolls in Greek. But the 5 books right here that was written by Moses, Genesis, was originally named Bereshith. It was named Bereshith. It was the same name as the first word of the Bible. Now, there is some significance in them naming it the first word of the Bible, but it had nothing to do with picto-graphic meaning. But they do translate it as in the beginning. So they don't use 2 different forms. We get the word Genesis from the Greek Septuagint. This is common knowledge, and he didn't even know this. Any commentator on Genesis would tell you that. Any good Bible study in the notes section would have told you that. Or maybe even in the introduction, because a lot of the study Bibles have introductions to the books, and they would have presented that in that we get the word Genesis from the title of the first book in Greek. Which, by the way, Genesis in Greek actually means beginning. So it's not a far-fetched word from Bereshith here. So, yeah. So this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He apparently just talking off the top of his head. So anyone in the dilemma is those who advocate such a theory, because it's like this, like Dr. Brown kept saying, it's bogus. It is a bogus theory. And he says, and do you understand that the disagreement we are having today is the same disagreement that took place at the time of the Tower of Babel? What disagreement is that? Because the Bible doesn't say anything about any disagreement. I told you it's getting weird because he's creating interpretations that are not there. All right. That would be the time when the pictographs were being changed to Paleo-Hebrew letters and the people divided into different camps of diction by the respective dictators. No. Hebrew wasn't even invented at that time. So it would actually have been later on when that happened, well after the Tower of Babel. Again, where's he getting this from? It's pure speculation. All right, let's continue. Trusted Living, he says, Chicken Little, he was referencing, he says this later, he was referencing Dr. Brown. He says, Chicken Little had to stifle scholarly debate being seen by the public and bearing post LMO. I think he was responding to Dr. Brown saying he had to, in the comment section, he pins the first comment that he makes, he pins to the top. The YouTube allows you to do that. And he said he had to ban some people because they were being very ornery and disrespectful. And so he jumps on this and acts like that's a big deal. He's not banning them because they have difference of views. Or otherwise he would have gotten banned. No, he's banning them because of how they're acting toward other people and toward him. They were acting very ornery because this is apparently a hot button topic for some of these people. That's why I didn't address Dr. Brown first, who is not qualified to teach about Hebrew word translation. He is qualified to teach about word translation. He has a PhD in Near Eastern languages, okay, and a Jewish background on top of that. Why would you not be qualified to teach on it? I'm more qualified to teach on it than you are. And I'm self-taught in studying Hebrew. But Dr. Brown is certainly qualified. Okay. I respond back to him. I said, wow. I will address each one of your main points for me to help keep my thoughts organized. Again, the bait there is used as an inseparable preposition. I've had to tell him this many times. There are three types of prepositions in Hebrew. Independent. Okay, I've already addressed all this. The makia preposition and inseparable preposition. So I discussed that. I'm just going to kind of gloss through it because I've already talked to you about that. The reason it can mean in or with is because these are prepositions in English. In other words, the nuanced translations translate over into English as this. This is why I said you really need to learn biblical Hebrew. But wait, here in a little bit, I am going to have to teach you some more Hebrew than this. I've had to teach him Hebrew, but because he didn't know Hebrew, but he's refusing to really get it, to learn. Reshith, pronounced Reshith, means beginning or chief. That's the Brown Driver Briggs Hebrew and English Lexicon, page 912. By the way, this lexicon is considered one of the top scholarly lexicons in the world. It's one of the top ones. It's right next to another one named Baumgartner, who's also one of the top scholarly lexicons on the Hebrew language. But this one's very, very top. In fact, I have it here. See? The Brown Driver's Briggs Hebrew Lexicon. It is my pride and joy in my Hebrew studies. It is awesome. I love it. But that's, according to the Brown Driver Briggs, okay, the Strong's Concordance is not considered a scholarly and academic, to be a scholarly source. Also, or not considered by scholars in academia to be a scholarly source. Also, context is very important, both to exegesis and to translating. In the first, God created the heavens and the earth would not even make sense in English. Hence the reason they translate it in the beginning. In the first place, I suppose you could translate it as first, depending upon the context, but at best, this would be a very loose translation. However, the meaning of the word is clear in Hebrew. Also, trying to find meanings in words that are not there is what we call eisegesis, which is where you are reading your interpretation back into the text. 3. This is just an appeal to authority fallacy. I mentioned that earlier. He appeals to authority fallacy. This is where you appeal to the opinions of others, then treat these opinions as if they're infallible, and they're not. I go into it a little bit spill on that. I'm going to kind of gloss ahead. In fact, the earliest Jewish tradition claims that Moses had written it. The context of the content is filled with examples of someone who knew Egyptian geography. Talking about the author of the Pentateuch. History, culture, and beliefs. For example, he intentionally omits the words sun and moon in Genesis 1:16 because much of the ancient world had worshipped the sun, and some, like the Egyptians, had worshipped the sun, and most famous of those cultures were Egypt, who believed that the sun and moon were greater god named Ra, and they believed the moon to be a lesser god. Someone writing in the background, loaded down with Semitism, would have never known that, nor be omitting it to show that these things are not worthy of worship. They would have just acted or used the Hebrew words for sun and moon instead. So the fact that they're omitted indicates that Moses is intentionally showing these people that sun and worship that the sun and moon ought not be worshipped. They're just simply aspects of creation. This seems to express somebody that probably is going against the views that ancient Egypt was known for, believing that the sun and moon were gods, and that they were being worshipped as such. 4. This next part is pure speculation. I understand this is your default presupposition, but we can't start with assuming our conclusion, or we are in danger of a circular argument. We must employ evidence and facts. You might be willing to assume your conclusion, but I am not. 5. The scriptures do not claim them to be gods. That's pertaining to them. This is just using eisegesis again. 6. There is of in Hebrew. I explained this already. But yeah, there's an of in Hebrew. I mentioned it in Hebrew studies. There is something called a constraint chain, which is the possessive use in Hebrew. This is something that uses chain of words composing of two things, the constraint noun and the absolute noun. In Hebrew, it creates a chain of words, hence the name. The constraint noun is always in the front, and which in Hebrew would be this side, okay? And the absolute noun, which is word lexical form, always appear in the back, okay? In English, using your above example, we would literally translate the passage God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. Although Bible translators may feel obliged to go more dynamic with this due to the fact that we don't usually do possessive nouns like this in English. 7. I have personally looked at the Leningrad Codex. There is a copy of it online. Genesis 1:1, Elohim for God in this verse, and it uses the word, and I put this, I actually copied and pasted it directly from the Leningrad Codex. Elohim, and I put parentheses Elohim to let him know what that word is, because he obviously can't speak it. Not the words you had claimed. Check out the Codex online and I gave him the link. He never even looked at it, because later he will make another mistake with the Leningrad Codex and claim it doesn't have vowel pointers, which is incorrect. And we'll go back to that when he gets that. But, yeah. Okay, 8. Lots of words and names are used in the Bible lots of times. This is just for speculation going out the door again. 9. Again, apologetics doesn't mean the word apology means today. Think of it as a double meaning, and you might just committed the equivocation fallacy. I don't have to apologize to no one when I believe you had missed the point of what I was saying there. Apologia, Greek, cf. 1 Peter 3:15, just means to make a defense. Now, he will also jump on this as well, and try to argue. See there, told you, because I'll talk about it having a double meaning. But he's missing the point. I'm not saying that words can't have multiple meanings. That's true in any language. Of course, it's still context to determine which meaning is intended by the writer, of course, and it can have multiple meanings. But this is not the argument he's bringing to the table. The argument he's bringing to the table is that originally this was intended as a pictographical meaning, and expressing the words, and eventually in the evolution of the language, it eventually came to just be a sound that gets added to other sounds to form words in the form of an alphabet. That's the way an alphabet works. And it becomes acrophonic. It becomes a very phonic language where the sounds determines are being combined with other sounds to form words. And these words are combined with sentences to form, or combined with other words to form sentences. And from that, then you can apply the rules of grammar, the rules of syntax, the rules of pronunciation, and things like that in those languages. And he's assuming that Moses would have understood them how they were originally written when he would have no knowledge of that. And he would not have applied that at all. And so there's actually a fallacy called fallacy of missing the point. And I think he's done that a number of times. But he actually misses the point every single step of the way. And I think he's intentionally not getting it. He wants me to somehow admit to something that's just not true, not logical, and doesn't fit the facts and evidence that we know. All right, 10. Again, your speculations are getting the better of you, but Canaanite is a Semitic word, not a Greek word. At this time, Greek didn't even exist as a language. The earliest evidence of the Greek language dates no earlier than the 1450 BC. And the Canaanites lived back in the 1800s BC. The origin of the word is disputed among, I actually put it twice, is disputed among scholars. But some think it means reddish purple, referring to the dye in the area. But no one knows for sure. However, the Bible identifies the name coming from Canaan, who was the grandson of Noah. It is probably more likely that this is the origin of the word. Thank you for your replies, but I got some things I got to do now. Blessings. Okay, he responds back. You do know, I responded to what he said earlier. You do know Dr. Brown is both trained in Hebrew and has a Jewish heritage, don't you? I don't know what this deal is about Chicken Little, but your response sounded weird. And me calling it weird is just me being polite. Blessings. And this was just a quick statement about what he said earlier about the Chicken Little comment and on Dr. Brown. And Dr. Brown has a PhD in New Eastern Studies, and he's saying, oh, he's not qualified. Yes, he is. All right. He goes further. He says, BTW, by the way, I knew you would address that post instead of either of the others. You were shown to be quite incorrect and hypocritical in your notions. I don't know what he was talking about there in that first sentence. I wasn't sure exactly what he was talking about. It's like, what are you talking about? I didn't reply. I replied to every single post he's made. Now, I've had to renew it whenever he replied, and he has replied multiple times to me, and I'm having to reply multiple times because he's got different posts. And so it creates some kind of confusion there, I'm sure. And I was not showing incorrect. He's never shown me incorrect or anything. And I wasn't being hypocritical. He just keeps on trying to, I think intentionally, misunderstood what I said. All right. Apologetics 101. Okay, this is me responding to him. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, I did this reply when I was at work. So I just kind of didn't know exactly what in the world he was getting at. I don't know what you're talking about. You're doing multiple posts, and I have to renew my screen to see what you have responded more. I can see that you responded some more, or there's more also in multiple posts. I don't know if your plan is to eloquently hurl these objections at me or not, but if it is, this is considered a flawed debate tactic. Either way, I've demonstrated that you're wrong at every turn and answered every point that I've seen that you sent me. up until the most recent ones. I will respond to those, but right now I'm at work or on break, and I work nights, which is where it was right now, where I live. It was night at that time. Most of them I might be able to do until after work. As far as any inconsistencies on my part, there hasn't been any. And simply asserting it won't make it true. Where have I been hypocritical? Okay. He comes back. He says, I was not trying to confuse you with multiple posts. You're nice enough to answer, though you insisting you are correct doesn't make it so. No, it doesn't. I'm not saying it does make me correct because I insisted. I'm saying because you're saying that I'm not correct doesn't make it so either. and that's what you did. He asserted that I wasn't correct. He said, you're just incorrect. And I've proven you incorrect. No, he hasn't. Where did he ever prove me incorrect about anything? All right. It goes further. Your hypocrisy lies in you using pictographic meaning for the letter bet. No, I did not use pictographic meaning for the letter bet. I used the nuanced translation of it as it is used as an inseparable preposition in ancient Hebrew that was practiced and applied by Moses, as Moses himself would have understood it. That's what I did. I did not use any pictographic meaning. The pictographic meaning of bet would have been a house. How's that apply to the prepositions? It don't. So I wasn't using a pictographic meaning. Come on. The very first letter in the title of Bereshith and the very first word demonstrates the validity of using pictographic meaning to cipher names written in Hebrew. No. How does that do that? Exactly. The first letter is ba. It don't mean house anymore. And how's that translate into in? With? No. And I had to explain this several times. Bet I had to do all the way through this debate. He would not let up. He thought it was a pictographic meaning. It doesn't have a pictographic meaning at all. He's shown his ignorance of Hebrew constantly throughout this debate. Sure, by the time the Leningrad Codex was written, the language had evolved into Hebrew words having diction meanings. But as I pointed out, of course, he's the one who brought up the Leningrad Codex, and I proved him wrong on it because Elohim was actually in the Leningrad Codex. But as I pointed out, that is what the Tower of Babel story was all about. Where's he getting this? While he's reading that, I even looked up the Tower of Babel story, and it's not in there. It doesn't say anything about this. So he has to be assuming this from the made-up stories that he thinks is being inserted or encoded into the Bible that's just simply not there. All right. Okay. But as I pointed out, Tower of Babel story was all. Tower Babel was all about. Story was all about. No, it wasn't. Tower of Babel was about them disobeying God when they were supposed to replenish the earth. They were all in one accord, in one language, in one location, and building a tower. And God cursed them by by making confusion, by making them speak different languages and then spreading them out. That's what the Tower of Babel was always about. Up to disobeying God when God told them to replenish the earth after the incident with Noah. All right, so he basically forced them to scatter, is what he did. I agree with the fact that the writers, he obviously believes that these were later editors. So he probably takes the position of the documentary hypothesis. He never says for certain on it, but it seems that way. Bereshith were very familiar with Egyptian culture. How could they be familiar with Egyptian culture? This was later on. Anyone writing on Genesis would have been Jews. If there was later editors, they would have been Jews. There wouldn't have been in the post-exilic period, which is what the theory of documentary hypothesis says, would not have been familiar with Egypt. They wouldn't have been in Egypt at all. So, and on top of that, geography changes over time, culture and history and things like that change over time. So they wouldn't have been familiar with how things were at the time Moses had lived, but yet the writer clearly knew it. So yeah, which included picto-graphic language. No, not with the Jews. Where we part our ways is, I believe, that nouns, and there are more in the Hebrew language that people realize. Well, if you're making up your own interpretations and your own meanings of words, I guess so, but not in the actual Hebrew language. Hold the original meanings, and through evolution of language have cloaked the original meanings. They didn't cloak it. They became a different meaning. In fact, they didn't become meanings at all. Each one of the letters are sounds and they're put together to form words. And the language, as it's developing, created ways of putting letters to a word and making that into like an inseparable preposition or something of that nature, where it would have a nuanced translation that would be added to the regular word translation. But this is not a pictographic meaning. All right. Okay, he says the structure of the stories are based in observation of nature. Okay, where is he getting that from? I don't know. As the ancient people believed what they were doing was neutral, and they were subscribed to a deity known as Judge Knocker. I did tell you this was going to get weird, right? I've never even heard of this before. This is... Dan Brown would be on the floor on this one. I mean, it's so out there. This is with alien conspiracy theory out there. This is, front page of National Enquirer out there. My child father is really the lizard man from Planet Zephyr or something. I mean, this is out there. That's it's crazy. It's but this is what he's saying. He says, known as Judge Knocker. Do you know about Knocker? How about Nashesh and Naka? The people pronounce as Noah. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. How can you read this and not see it as gibberish? I don't know. Noah was a real person that really lived. He's mentioned all throughout the Bible. Jesus recognized him as a literal person, as he did Adam as well in the New Testament. Of course, now Noah's name could have had like embellishments in some of the stories, like some of the flood stories and stuff. Like there's like over 500 about 500 flood legends. I've heard 300. I've heard 500. But between 300 to 500 flood stories in flood story in every culture and nation around the world, and the closest one is the story of Gilgamesh, and so that's the closest to the Bible. And some of the names in it seem similar to Noah. I think the one for the character in Gilgamesh is similar to Noah. So this is probably embellished forms of it. So if, assuming that he's right on any of those names, there could be embellished forms of Noah. But I think he's getting at that Noah is somehow a made-up name, which is not true at all. Like I said, the whole Bible recognizes Noah as literal. Even Jesus recognized Noah as a little person. So others can't see or hear the connection? No, we employ a little bit of common sense, so no, we don't. There is a theme in the structures, and it is not the creation of the human race. The Bible explicitly talks about the creation of the human race. I think every scholar, whether they accept the Bible is true or don't accept the Bible is true, would say the Bible teaches the creation of the Hebrew race. It was the creation of a slave society. Okay, again, I warned you ahead of time. It's going to get weird. It was the creation of a slave society led and taxed by Egyptian authorities. Oh, man. This guy ought to be writing fairy tales. And the same structure exists to this day. Okay, I understand. I know this is laughable, and some of y'all are laughing about it, and I'm laughing about it, and I don't blame you, but it is a serious matter. It really is. I just can't help but laugh at it. But I'm not trying to embarrass this person. I'm not trying to call this person out. I'm trying to help other people that might come across this. This was something I've never come across this before. This is the first time I've ever, I've come across just about every other kind of skeptic. I've come across people that were part of cults. I've come across old earth creationists. I've come across evolutionists, theistic evolutionists, people that believe in the gap theory. I've come across Christians that had different interpretations of the Bible. I've come across, like I said, cults. I've come across atheists. I've come across agnostics. I've come across people that just love Bart Ehrman to death. I have never come across this. I've come across people that believe strongly in the conspiracy theory advocated by Dan Brown in the Da Vinci Code. But I've never come across somebody like this, with this particular. This is for me, this is a new kind of skepticism. One I've never seen before. It's unusual. And I knew I would have to do a video about it because what if you came across someone like this? Some of the stuff he's saying is just weird. It's out there weird. And I understand that it's weird. And I understand that you're going to see it as weird. And I don't blame you. It is weird. Okay? So, like I said, it is a bit on the strange side. Okay? Human race, it was the creation of a slave society led by the taxed Egyptian authorities, and the same structure exists to this day. I know. And that is what scares people into a state of cognitive dissonance. Nobody's scared. Like Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown is not scared. His whole existence is threatened by the truth. No, his whole existence is to preach the truth. I don't agree with Dr. Brown on everything, but I know his goal is truth. Sometimes we don't always get there, and sometimes we have to change our minds or realize we might be wrong about something. But my goal, my intent, and I believe Dr. Brown's intent is truth. Just like the Pharisees of old. Wow. By the way, the Chicken Little comment was for Dr. Brown. Since we started these comments, he has taken away the newest post first option from the thread to bury these posts. Okay, this is going to be I think he's questioning Dr. Brown's motivation, that he's rerouted how to do the post. Now, usually the YouTube post is usually done this way, that the newest ones wind up going on the bottom. The newest ones first is unusual for YouTube videos. Most YouTube videos usually reword the post so it goes toward the end of it. Dr. Brown, it doesn't mean Dr. Brown is trying to bury it or anything like that. That is actually the usual way that these YouTube comments are. Because I've commented on a number of them. This is the way they're usually worded. I think mine is worded this way. It doesn't mean we're trying to bury the thing. Usually it's just better to go all the way at the end and respond, because that's usually how I know that where the ending. Like if I'm trying to find a particular reply and stuff, I go all the way at the ending of the reply section, and I can see where I applied the most recent and where someone else applied the most recent and so forth. This is just how they normally order it. Okay. Again, this is me talking again. You've shown everybody you have no idea what you're talking about. Bereshith is a word, Reshith, that is combined with an inseparable preposition, but as I already had mentioned. The title, Genesis, or Genesis in Greek, is not the title of the first book of the Tanakh. I mentioned this, Hebrew Scriptures. This title is the same word as the first word of the Bible, Bereshith. We get the word Genesis from the title of the book in this book, talking about the book of Genesis in the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, translated in the 3rd century BCE, roughly. Genesis in Greek means beginning or origins. So again, not true. This, by the way, is also common knowledge. Even every commentator ever written on Genesis would tell you that. If your theory was true, then the Jews called their first book of the Bible an entire message. What are you talking about? What disagreements? Talking about the disagreements of the Tower of Babel that he says is there. The Bible tells us that there were no disagreements at the Tower of Babel. They were all one language. Genesis 11:1 ESV. It was not until God's judgment that their languages were divided, but these were spoken, not written. It's not talking about the written language, it's talking about the verbal. The word Babel actually means confusion. The earliest written cuneiform that we have dates back to Mesopotamia in 3500 BCE, 100 years after the incident at the Tower of Babel. Pictographs evolved into these. Therefore, this didn't happen during the time of the Tower of Babel. Paleo-Hebrew would have been cuneiform script, not pictographs. Every time you speak this way, it sounds like you are arguing off the top of your head rather than approaching this intellectually and within reason. To someone like me that's a Christian apologist and scholar and someone who has been researching Hebrew for years, you sound like gibberish to me. I don't mean to sound offensive or trying to be rude or anything, but much of what you said so far sounds nonsensical. I don't know why anyone, let alone a reasonable person, would take this position. Maybe it is, as Dr. Brown said in the above video, you are willingly deceiving yourself. Now, I probably should have worded this a little different. I was basically going by what he said in the video, and I was saying this, and I was really talking about situationally. I wasn't making a homonym or anything. I was trying to target the situation of his refusal to accept facts, evidence, plain reasoning, demonstrable proof, etc. And he's refusing to do this, and it seems like he's willingly deceiving himself. You are willingly misled. You're willingly ignorant. This is also coming from Dr. Brown's video, but I was really referring to that situationally. I wasn't calling him stupid. In fact, in parentheses I put a word that just means that you're not informed, meaning ignorant means you're not informed. It does not mean stupid. So calm down. Now, funny thing is, he will come back and says, "Oh, you're attacking me and with insults." No, I wasn't. Ignorant. Everybody's ignorant of something. Everyone's ignorant of something because we don't know everything. There's always something that we don't know. So we're all uninformed about something. Ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It just so happens he's ignorant about this, but I was really talking about the the circumstances where he's willingly ignorant. He doesn't want to know the truth so badly that he's just plugging at desperation one after the next. That's what I was referring to, and he just kind of got a little offended by it, and I probably should have maybe toned it down a bit, but I wasn't really calling him a name or anything. If this is the case, then nothing I say would really matter to you. It will always fall on deaf ears. You need to really desire the truth in order to pursue it. It's not going to pursue you. And more we discuss this topic matter, the more I am convinced that Dr. Brown is correct. Blessings. which I am. I'm actually absolutely convinced that he's correct on it, because he talked about these weird, nonsensical interpretations people come up with. They're completely subjective. He even called it like creating your own Bible, he says in the video. Like I said, I will be putting the link to Dr. Brown's video for you to watch the full video in the description box below. All right. So, because this is him talking. So, because you call the bet letter an inseparable preposition, that somehow changes the fact that you use a picto-graphical translation for its meaning. All right, it's not me calling it that. It's the rules of Hebrew. It's calling it that. I'm only obeying those rules. But it's the pictographical meaning's already lost from that time, because that's not how Moses was using it. And you do realize that the Bereshith as the first word is a phrase. It's not a phrase, it's a noun. Which, hold on. Emma, I'm making a video. Yes. I don't know, I'm going to have to edit all this out because I'm recording. Give me till 1 or 1:15, please. Is there something important you need? I don't have the money. Not even in your wallet? No, I put money back for the rent and stuff. We can't do fast food. I told you that yesterday. Baby, I told you I couldn't. I have $20. Just give me till 1:15 and we'll talk about it, okay? No disturbing me. All right, yeah. He says, and you do realize the Bereshith as the first word is a phrase, is not a phrase, it's a noun, which is multiple words to explain a single word. No, for start with, it's not a phrase, it's a noun. Okay, it's Bereshith. How is Bereshith a phrase? It's not a phrase. It's a noun. It's a noun combined with an inseparable preposition. It's not a phrase. When it combined, it don't create a phrase. So it doesn't mean multiple things. It only means like in the beginning. That's it. Because ba means in and Reshith means beginning. In the beginning. That's all it means. But this is different from what he says anyhow, because he's talking about creating entire messages and putting it in there for that single word. All right, so this is different from what he's saying anyhow. But he's trying to liken it what I'm saying, so he can make it look like I'm actually agreeing with the pictographical meaning, and I'm not. So of course, he says, the title could have been a phrase or multiple words. No, it isn't. In fact, the actual word is actually Reshith, but it's just adding an inseparable preposition to the word. So the actual word is actually Reshith. So it's not multiple words, because bet is actually not a word, it's a letter. It's just a letter prefixed to a word. In this case, the word is Reshith. Okay. Where we disagree is how and what those words should be. No, we disagree far more than that. I'll mention that when I reply. You are caught up in religious jargon. Oh, this is interesting. Religious jargon, and I use logic and realistic approach. Now, I've read this to you all the way up until now. Okay, I didn't say anything about religious jargon. Now, I think in one of my replies, and I think I might have replied after this one, I think, where I mentioned that that Dr. Brown is interested in truth, and that I don't know if I said it or I glossed over it, but it says where I said that he's concerned that you might be turning God's word into man's word. That's all I basically said. And that had to do with whether Michael Brown was, like afraid and concerned and trying to hide the truth, and none of that was the case. But what logic and realistic approach that he had? None. His position is actually illogical because you have to assume that Moses, who did not know about the original meanings of where the letter originally came from, applied letters, not knowing those original symbol meanings that they would have had, in a different group of another. We'll just call it another language because that's pretty much what it is. It is another language because it's not the same language with an alphabet and rules of grammar and syntax and so forth. So, and he took those letters, he puts them together, form words that's understood by that language, and using the rules of grammar and syntax in that language. So his position is illogical, and there is no realistic approach to it. None. It so defies reason, so defies facts, so defies what we know historically that no scholar, and this is what Dr. Brown said in the video above. He says there's no Semitic scholar, no scholar in Hebrew anywhere that he is aware of that would take this position. All right. Okay, so this is not a realistic approach. You're grasping at straws. No, he is. In fact, as we continue in each reply, you'll notice how desperate he'll start becoming. He'll keep getting more desperate and more desperate and more desperate with each and every reply. All right. And your assessment of Tower of Babel story, again, more straws, and it was now a straw man. I don't even know if he even knows what a straw man is. Straw man. It's not actually straw men, it's actually straw man. But he doesn't even know what a straw man is. A straw man fallacy is when you attack a position that someone doesn't have. And he never tells me how I committed a straw man. Even when I said, hey, you can't assert this, you got to sit there and tell me where I committed a straw man. He still doesn't. He never does. Again, I wasn't the one grasping straws. He is. Where did I ever commit a straw man? I attacked the position that he put on the thing. And he never explains where I attacked the straw man because I don't think he really understood what a straw man is. And I think he just wanted to play on words with the grasping of straws thing. But I wasn't grasping at straws either. I was stating facts and evidences and presenting strong arguments that he cannot refute. Okay, the Hebrew name God, H1410, does not exist in the story. The name, I don't even know how I pronounce this because this is not the name Jehovah even. And JEHWH, I don't know, H3068. I've never even heard of that. So I don't know if he's misspelled something or mispronounced something or doesn't understand something. It's very common in many of his replies. All right, before I get further, I want to explain something real quick. That's actually false. Okay, God is actually in the story of Tower of Babel. He's in verse 5, chapter 11, verse 5 of Genesis, in which case, in the translations, it does so as Lord, Lord, all caps. Anytime you see all caps in the Old Testament, it's always because the true name of God, Yahweh, is being mentioned. You look it up in there, and it is the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, which is pronounced in Hebrew as Yahweh. All right, that was the Hebrew word for God. So he is in the story. So that's complete false. And this is common. This is totally common among his replies. He will state things as facts, and when you check them out, they're not facts at all. In fact, the opposite ones are being true. By the way, there's actually no J in Hebrew. I mentioned this later too. I don't have a problem with someone who, let's say like Dr. Brown or somebody, or James White, who wants to translate Yahweh at times, or versions of that into Jehovah. I mean, there are places where you can translate Jehovah if you want to. Sometimes the Yod is the Hebrew letter that's the Y sound. it gets translated as a J sound, kind of like the way the iota gets translated as a J sound in the Greek. Like Iesus is the Greek word for Jesus, and and that gets over, and J, because there's no J in Greek either, and there's no J in Hebrew either as well. It's a yod that's there, and so you pronounce Yahweh's name is Yahweh, not Jehovah. But I don't have a problem if someone wants to translate it that way, or but when you argue, and I have to tell them this next time as well, when you argue beyond that, to the point where you take it to the extent of trying to claim that Jehovah is the actual word that's supposed to be there, or that it's intended to go, when you go beyond that and argue translationally, it should be Jehovah. In the original script, it should be Jehovah. It should be translated, guaranteed translation, translated as Jehovah. When you go beyond that, then I would have an issue with it. But just simply saying, hey, look, I'm going to still say Jehovah here. Okay. I don't have a problem with that, but just don't take that too far. All right. Let's continue. It says the original language was the picto-graphic language. I'm glad he's starting to use pictographic instead of photographic, because he originally started out using photographic. And the language that came after included the Paleo-Hebrew, of which there was many dialects. What came after? The Paleo-Hebrew, that's the pictographic language. And the language that came after included the Paleo-Hebrew, of which there was many dialects. How can it be dialects to a pictographic language? I don't know. That doesn't make no sense to me. Hence, different interpretation of words. No. This is not a phonetic language, so it's not a bunch of dialects. But anyway, and it is known by looking at the Leningrad Codex. Here's what he's going to say. He's going to say, hear what he says right here. There are no vowel pointers in that text either. Okay, his proof, he says, that they had multiple interpretations within that, he says, can be found in the Leningrad Codex, which have no vowel pointers in that text. Let's go back and look at the Leningrad Codex again. You see this? You see these dots and dashes all around the word? Right here, you see the vocal shewa. You see the vowel pointer. I can't think of the name of it at the moment. It's hold on. This is you see the vocal sheva, you see the teser right here makes a e sound or makes the a sound of an e, like e and they. So this is ba re, and then of course the olive is silent in Hebrew, and then you got the shin here, along with hirak, and of course the ta here, and you see, like I mentioned earlier, the degesh lene, the dot in the center is missing. So you would pronounce it the. So Boer Sheath is how you would pronounce that with the hirak. Now look, see these dots right here? These are all vowel pointers. All vowel pointers. See that? You see the vowel pointers over here? It's like he never. One of the things that I do a lot, you'll see me doing it a lot, I will check out my facts before I tell you. Before I present these facts, I will check the facts out make sure that it's fact before I tell you. I don't just simply try to speak off the top of my head to give responses. Yeah, but he does. He didn't even bother checking it out with the Leningrad Codex. He says his proof that they had different dialects was the fact that they didn't have, which is really weird because the Leningrad Codex actually dates 1,000 years after Christ. So how would that be relevant to the time of Moses in Genesis or anyone writing in the Old Testament down? I don't know. But he says that. And of course they were right because the Codex comes 1,000 years after Christ. So it was after the pointers were invented. And so he's got two errors here, major errors. Leningrad Codex wouldn't even be relevant to the subject matter because it's not written during the time of the Old Testament or even before the Old Testament. It doesn't represent what's going on before Genesis was written. And the second major error is that he's factually incorrect anyhow, because not only is the Codex written after vowel pointers were invented, but it has vowel pointers in it. So this is completely bogus. This is completely false. He stated something that was factually inaccurate. Is he lying about it? I don't want to accuse him of that. A lot of people speak off the top of their heads and really think what they're speaking off the top of their heads is true. And they'll express it as a fact and they'll dogmatically hold to it. So he could really believe the garbage he's spewing out. But it's just not true. I've demonstrated it's not true. When I come back, I will demonstrate it as not true. Okay, he says, and it was known by looking at the Leningrad Codex that there are no vowel pointers in that text either. We showed that was not true. Face it, you're basing your thoughts and notions on a fairy tale. I'm not the one spewing out fairy tales. Created out of allegory of something you refuse to acknowledge. It sounds to me like he's accusing me of what's true for him. He's the one who's spewing out fairy tales of allegories that he thinks are allegories. No. So, of course, you resort to insults. Now, this is the part where he accuses me of insult. Like I mentioned, I didn't actually insult him. I wasn't insulting him. I wasn't saying he was stupid. I wasn't saying he was unintelligent. That's not what I was saying. I was saying he's willingly ignorant, meaning he's, in a situational sense, he's choosing a path that says, I'm not going to look at the facts. I'm not going to look at the evidence. I'm not going to even consider it. I'm not going to be open-minded to it. I'm going to shout facts off the top of my head, which are not facts. And regardless how many times I get proven wrong, I refuse to accept it. That's what I mean. And I usually don't use strong language like that, even with ignorant. I usually don't use that word very often. Try not to. But I was kind of getting some of that from Dr. Brown, because Dr. Brown does use stronger words than I do. And so that's partly what I was doing. Maybe I should have toned it down a bit. I wasn't trying to offend him or insult him or anything like that. Everybody's ignorant of something. And I told him ahead of time, I told him, hey, look, ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It means uninformed about something. And everybody's uninformed about something. All right. This is par for the course when dealing with the ignorant. Okay, so he goes around and calls me ignorant, but he accuses me of insulting. Okay. Wicked purveyors of obscurity. You are mentioned. Oh, again, another weird statement. You are mentioned in Genesis 1:2 as Shoshek. I have never even heard that word before. Okay, he says H2822. What the world is Shoshek? Where is he getting that from? I looked up Genesis 1:2. There was nothing about Shoshek. 1:2 was just Genesis. It's in the creation account. It's God just got through. Moses just got through saying, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." In verse 2, it says, "And the earth was formless and void." Okay, that's verse 2. There's nothing about no Shoshek. In fact, nothing was mentioned in it at all. So where's he getting that from? I have no idea. The words for empty and void is tahu and bohu. So bohu, because it's missing the names one name, but yeah. So where's he getting Shoshack? It's not even in verse 2 at all. So yes, even with different diction meanings, translators choose theirs to suit their purpose when translating Hebrew into English. Not true at all. There's some really good Bible translations translated by scholars. They're committees of scholars, and the reason they're translated by committees is to help keep theological biases under control and prevent them translating it. They translated the rules of Hebrew grammar and the Hebrew syntax, and the language is still the same no matter what their beliefs are. Okay, those rules don't change, and there's also context that they have to look at. So they look at context, and there's committees of these guys specializing in these areas, all looking at the same thing. So they don't just pick and choose what translation they use. This would be more true if it was an individual translating it than a group of people. So yes, even with different diction meaning, translators choose theirs to suit their purposes. No, they don't. When translating Hebrew into English, this guy knows nothing about translating. Looks like ignorance is still in the forefront for you, because I know the facts, so I must be ignorant. Just like the scripture says. No. And he's getting the wrong scripture, apparently. Alright. I come back. Okay. Again, I'm going to use multiple points to keep my thoughts organized. Okay. 1. Once again, I did it like this just to kind of do the pronunciation. This is based on the letter, and it really, if you translating this perfectly, it's hard to do that in the comment section, but this E would be like a floating E up here, like a superscript E. It sometimes, if done in this form, it's usually a backwards E, it might be, I can't remember, but I think it's a superscript B up here, and then it's in this form, it's a backwards E when it's transliterated. But I can't do that in the comment section. So that's why I did it like this. And that E is supposed to represent the vocal shera underneath. And it's a unique vowel in Hebrew, and it makes kind of like the A and a muse. So it's like a sound. So in a way, it kind of makes the letter say its sound a little bit more emphasized. Like instead of saying "ba," you say "ba." So it's not just breshith or something. It's "ba" reshith. And when we do it, connected it. Say, I said "ba." Again, I had to tell them this a lot in the inseparable preposition. I go over this constantly. Once again, as an inseparable preposition in Bereshith in Genesis 1:1. I've already explained this more than once, way more than once, and I will continue to have to explain it. I was not, all caps for emphasis, using a picto-graphical meaning. The word "in" or even "with" are English prepositions that "ba" translates to when used as an inseparable preposition only. Therefore, this is not me being hypocritical. It is me applying the rules of Hebrew grammar as I translated the specific nuance that the letter bet adds to the word when it is in this form. 2. No Hebrew scholar uses pictographical meaning to decipher names. They use the translation as it is understood through the rules of Hebrew language. And then I mentioned in ancient times, I already mentioned this, and gave the same examples I give here. 3, you had brought up the Leningrad Codex in reference to the alleged alternative versions of Bereshith, but I was simply demonstrating that was factually inaccurate since it uses Bereshith too. 4, I have already responded to your Tower of Babel argument. I demonstrated the error rather than to repeat myself, which I've had to do many times in this debate. At this point, I would just redirect you to my previous post where I responded to this. 5, scholars who reject Mosaic authorship will usually believe in something called the documentary hypothesis. I don't know if you fall into this category or not, but according to this theory, a number of editors had compiled the Pentateuch, the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses, and it said, before your mind races to another conspiracy theory, I knew he would probably jump on that. The word Pentateuch just means 5 scrolls in Greek, while Torah, that refers to the same 5 books, just means law in Hebrew. In the time following the Jews' exile from Jerusalem to Babylon in 539 BC. I should have probably made this larger. I don't know if y'all could see that. Alright. Let's make it larger so that way it'd be better. Let's see, where am I? Alright. Scholar who reject Mosaic authorship, documentary hypothesis. I don't know if he falls into this category or not, but according to this theory, a number of editors had compiled the Pentateuch, and I mentioned all that. Torah that refers to 5 books that means law in Hebrew. In the time following the Jews' exile from Jerusalem to Babylon in 539 BC. If this is the case, then these editors would have no knowledge of Egypt. Whoever wrote the Pentateuch knew about Egyptian geography, political words and structure, culture and beliefs. Any later editor, unless it wasn't by an Egyptian or a Greek living in the land of Egypt, both of these would have nothing to do with Hebrew scriptures. They would not be writing Hebrew scriptures. Would not have known these things since the Jews did not lived in Egypt at this time. Amen. Plus, they knew that was true about Egypt in the time of Moses. Geography changes with time. 6. I know this is what you believe. I get that. However, the problem is that Moses, who wrote Genesis, whoever you think these later editors were, would not have, or whoever you think these later editors were, would not have known that these original meanings were, and therefore would not have applied them. He would use the normal usage of his language in his time and the rules of that language, just as we write today, to write. At that time, each letter was represented by a sound, just as it is used in our language today. Exegesis attempts to figure out what the original writer intended. So if Bereshit is translated in the beginning, then combined with its context, we translate its meaning. This is the only way the original writer, or whoever you think he or they were, would have understood it. The other problem is that you need to demonstrate what you are saying. So far, you have given no evidence for your position. Your position defies even reasoning, and you seem to speculate a lot, making a lot of unfounded assertions that seem to me be generated off the top of your head. So far, you have given me no reason to think that you're right, let alone a good reason. This may be your belief, but you cannot substantiate it. Every time you speak on it, it sounds out there to everyone reading this post. 7. I said, Judge Knocker argument sounds like more speculation. No one in the Bible is claiming any of that. Where are you getting your interpretation from? He never tells me. Oh yeah, you make it up based on meaning of a picto-graphic script that Moses nor any other Jew living afterwards would have known, which allows you to create your own interpretation of your own Bible. This code you think is hidden in the real Bible. This is so out there that this is on the level of Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. So I was saying it's really out there. Nobody is scared. It's just that your theory is just so bogus, not to mention obviously unreasonable. To be honest, I'd rather believe in a flat earth before I accept a theory this obviously ridiculous, committing intellectual suicide to boot. However, in spite its laughable nature, it is still serious since these interpretations defy everything we know. I promise you, Dr. Brown is not shaking in his boots. In fact, he is probably laughing at it, if not the serious nature of creating any interpretation that floats your boat without any thought to translations, context, nor exegesis. We're not scared, but we do feel pity for those who have been misled by this theory. 9. Actually, most comments are ordered this way on YouTube. I mentioned this already. So he's not because he's afraid and stuff. let's move on. He says, well, there we have it. The behemoth will remain in Chochek forever. This does not make sense. I assume maybe he's talking about the behemoth seat in Greek in the New Testament, but I don't know. He has not demonstrated that he knows much about these original languages. So he might just be throwing up a gibberish word or something. But the only thing behemoth that I know of, the behemoth, it's actually the judgment seat of Christ where all believers would stand in front of. It's just a thing that the Bible tells us that we will receive rewards just in the Bible, or the body, that we done in our deeds in the body and that sort of thing. So this is actually not the eternal white throne judgment at the end of the world in Revelation. But I don't know how he's taken that, or even if he's talking about this. He never really clarifies. The Shoshek is the nonsensical interpretation he made of Genesis 1-2 that makes no sense. All right. You may again declare your false victory and get back to being Yom and Yam for the other behemoth. Enjoy your bliss. May you get what you deserve soon. All right. Again, gibberish talking here. False victory. I don't have to declare a false victory. I mentioned that when I came back. I said, I don't have to declare a false victory. It's clear to anyone reading this that I won this debate. But it is about more than just winning. I want him to know the truth. And I mean that sincerely. It was all joking and laughing. I know I laughed and I cut up and you know, and I went all over the place with it. But basically, I do want this guy to come to the truth. I pray for him. I did pray for him. In fact, I prayed for him before I even started this video. I want this guy to come to the truth. So if he's watching this, understand I have no ill will toward him at all. He has ill will to me, but I don't have any ill will to him. I want him to know the truth and eventually come to the truth. And I even prayed for him that he would eventually. That the Spirit of God would lay conviction on his heart and he would start actually checking these things out instead of just assuming them and looking this information up. This right here, okay. I don't know what he meant by this, to be honest. Yom is the Hebrew word for day. Sometimes people pronounce Yom as Yom, but even then they understand it's Y-O-M when they're transliterating it. Sometimes it's transliterated as Y-O-H-M. Because the or Y-O or Y Y-W-O-M because the wall there is being used as what's called a vowel letter, in this case a holem wall, in its conjunction with a holem, which is a vowel pointer. That's like right up here in like a corner or something, and it basically makes the sound of the holem. The holem is like a little dot here, and it basically makes the long O sound. Okay, so this is actually pronounced Yom, but a lot of people do pronounce Yom, and so that might be where he's getting this and pronouncing it with an A, and maybe he doesn't, since he can't read Hebrew, he doesn't understand what the actual pronunciation is, or you know why people call it Yom, and so he translates it as, or transliterate it as Y-A-M. So that's my guess on it. I don't know for sure because he doesn't really seem to. There's a lot of confusing stuff in his statements, and it makes it even less confusing when he adds behemoth. All right, but yeah, I did win this debate, no doubt. But look at the last statement he makes. May you get what you deserve soon. He wishes ill will toward me because I disagree with him, because I don't agree with him. But I don't wish ill will to him, and I tell him that the next time I reply. I tell him that. All right. He tells me something else here. It says, in and with can both be symbolic meanings of bet. Where is he getting this? It's not even the original picto-graphic meaning. Where do you think those meanings originate from? They create them when they have the language. They create the rules of the language. Now, you're just being Silly. No, I'm working out the rules of ancient Hebrew. Ancient Hebrew was simply an Egyptian hieratic script. Where's he getting this from? I don't know. For use with the land of Canaan. No. And its religious order of the Elohim and its slaves. Again, made up history. Not true. Okay, I respond. This is also going to be in points in my last post dealing with this matter. I end up doing one more. You reply twice, but I'm going to handle each of these posts into one, which will result in breaking up the post since I made it too long and gave my final thoughts on the whole matter. Part 1. 1. Hold on. I never used a picto-graphical meaning to it. Are you saying that individual prepositions like in or with has anything to do with a ox head? I said ox head because I remember Brown mentioning that. But it's actually, I think he, when I watched the video again before doing this, it was actually, it wasn't ox head. That was for the A. B was house. B was house. But it came to only mean the sound of it. But what does a house have anything to do with this? The prepositions in, by, with, none of that has anything to do with that. I use those because that's the nuanced meaning of bet when it is added as an inseparable preposition. I have to mention that several times. Let me give you some citations of this regarding an inseparable preposition. Practical and Van Pelt. Let's just show you the book. Right here, Basics of Biblical Hebrew. Alright, Basics of Biblical Hebrew, 2nd edition, pages 50 to 51. Alright, this is what they said. These prepositions are prefixed directly to their objects and never occur independently. In listing the Hebrew letters down, bet stands for in, by, with. Again, that's Practio and Van Pelt, Basics of Biblical Hebrew Grammar, 2nd edition, pages 50 and 51. In another Hebrew source that I have, Arnold and Shoy said in reference to a temporal usage of inseparable preposition, see below, they said that this is the book right here. It's a guide to biblical Hebrew syntax by Bill T. Arnold and John H. Shoy. They said expresses a moment or point of time when an action takes place and he gives the example, in the day, or they give the example, in the day when Yahweh, God, made earth and heavens. Arnold and Shoy, a guide of biblical Hebrew syntax, 2nd edition, page 117. I don't make up interpretations and facts. This is what you do. Nothing I am saying is strictly off the top of my head. Bet means getting things when it is bet means these things when it is used as an inseparable preposition, and in case of Genesis 1:1, it is used temporally. This also makes up what is called a temporal clause, but I'm fixing to go into this. 2. Not true. Bereshith is not a phrase. I already mentioned this. It's an inseparable preposition, not a phrase. And I go into it like noun and used as a temporal clause. This is a type of clause in Hebrew. There is some significance tied to them naming the book after its first word, but it was nothing to do with pictographical meaning that Moses nor no other Jew would have been even aware of. 3. No, we disagree with far more. As I have mentioned many times now, this is being used as a presupposition, all caps for emphasis, and in, with, and by are its nuanced translation that's been added to the word's already existing translation of Reshith, Hebrew beginning, pronounced Reshith. This has nothing to do with pictographical meanings. You're trying to get an entire story out of a single word. How is that alike? 4. I am not using religious jargon. In fact, in no given time did I ever use theological terms other than me mentioning God's word, but that pertaining, if you take me in context, to your allegation of Michael Brown, or me being afraid when that's not the case. Me going back to the rules of ancient Hebrew isn't using religious jargon either. There are non-Christians who study both ancient Hebrew and ancient Greek, such as Bart Ehrman. This is mainly what I am talking to you about, the original language of the Bible, which you seem really unfamiliar with. You also never used logic nor any realistic approaches that I am aware of. Actually, your position was illogical and you committed a number of fallacies, including but not limited to you reading a much earlier understanding of pictures no longer in use into the later Hebrew script from the original writers of Scripture. You also committed eisegesis an innumerable amount of time in committed eisegesis and innumerable amount of time in our dialogue. I think you were assuming your position of your conspiracy theory and then read that meaning back into the text. 5. I'm not the one grasping at straws. You can actually check me out. I am real with my information, but your subjective interpretations are created off the top of your head. So not only do you not demonstrate what you're saying, but you have to resort to false assertions that are easily disprovable. I ask to the reader to read each of our posts carefully and see which of us were grasping at straws. 6. My assessment of the Tower of Babel story was not straws. I gave you the facts. I didn't date the cuneiform. Scholars did. By the way, Hebrew wouldn't even have existed at the time of the Tower of Babel. It would be a long time afterwards that Hebrew came into existence. Okay, I already went over all that. 7. God does appear in the story of Tower of Babel. I mentioned that in verse 5. 8. You're missing the point, I think. Moses would have had no knowledge of these interpretations. So how could he insert interpretations that he failed to acknowledge? You can throw up these letters' original meanings before they actually evolved into letters and sounds all day long until the cows come home. I'm sure he would, if you like. But the point is that Moses would have never inserted these interpretations. It is fallacious to say otherwise. 9. What is regarding vowel pointers? That has to do with pronunciations, not translations. Either way, there are vowel pointers in the Leningrad Codex. In fact, if you, like I showed you already, if you scroll up above and you see my replies, I pasted and copied Elohim directly out of the Codex. You can see that it had vowel pointers in it. Vowel pointers are those little dots and dashes surrounding the word. In fact, let me copy and paste all of verse 1 directly from the Codex to the comment section. And I did it like this. This is how it was. You saw how it was ordered in the Codex. And Haaretz, the earth, was kind of like by itself down there. So that word was kind of hard to try to get this on there as I was trying to paste it. Leningrad Codex, Genesis 1:1. Of course, all of it got pasted. I just think Haaretz might be, it's right here because it was right down here on the Codex. Leningrad Codex, Genesis 1:1 at, and I gave the site for it, blueletterbible.org. It right here. And let's go back to that real quick. Again, see, vowel pointers all around the words. Those little dashes and dots are all vowel pointers. So again, he was factually incorrect. See those small dots and dashes and T symbols, etc. That's the hatif, the quamats, the one that makes the kind of like the short A sound, etc. These are called vowel pointers, and that is straight from the Leningrad Codex. In fact, this codex dates to over 1000 CE, and vowel pointers are invented by the Mosaic scribes around 8900. We would expect vowel pointers to be in this codex, and that's what we see. 10. I'm not basing anything that I am saying on a fairy tale. Once again, I ask the reader who has been offering you facts and evidence that you can check out for yourself and who has been offering subjective interpretations and non-factual assertions. Now, part 2, 11. I never insulted you. Ignorant is not an insult because it does not mean stupid. As I have already stated, it means that you are not informed about something. Everyone is ignorant about something, even me. I don't know everything, but I do know something. I'm not ignorant of the rules of Hebrew. I'm almost done. Give me about 10 to 15 more minutes, please. Seriously? 10 minutes. I never insulted you. Ignorant is not an insult. It does not mean that stupid, as I have already stated. It means you are informed or not informed about something. Everyone is ignorant about something, even me. I don't know everything, but I do know something. I'm not ignorant of the rules of Hebrew, but you are. If you get offended by that, I'm sorry. It is not my intent to offend. Rather, I am simply commenting on the situation, which is why, as Dr. Brown did in the above video, I called you willingly ignorant, meaning you are choosing this situation of not knowing the truth. You didn't even bother to check out the link in the to the Leningrad Codex, which would have shown you these words do have the vowel pointers on them. In case you're wondering, he never refutes that. He doesn't check these things out. 12. Where is Shoshak? I could not find the word in verse 2. 2 already went over that. 13. You have a faulty idea of how translating works. I already went over this, but basically, this is not how translation works. And I actually went over it pretty good before. He apparently is confused about how translation is actually done. 14. Again, I'm not ignorant at all. In fact, I have backed everything up, and people can even check me out on it, which unlike him. Again, I have advised you to actually study Hebrew. You have been shown time and time again to not know what you are talking about on this. In spite both of our assertiveness with each other, I really do hope and pray that you come to the truth. And I meant that. I meant that at the time. I mean that now. I really mean that, and I will be praying for you in the hope, and I did, in the hope that one day you'll come to the truth and even know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. Whether this person was not a Christian or not, I don't know if the person calls himself a Christian or if he calls himself saved, but he never refuted the idea that he needed salvation. He never said otherwise. So I don't know if his views are different, if he just didn't want to bother with that. I don't know. Or maybe he just skimmed through it and didn't realize I said that. But either way, he never refuted the fact that he needed Jesus as his Lord and Savior. So I will be praying for that because I wonder if this guy's even saved. I personally think that should be awesome if that happens. 15. Now responding to the other post. Again, Genesis 1:2 says nothing about Shoshak, which is nowhere to be found in the text. Yom in the Hebrew means day, so the reference is Yom Yom. I already talked about that. I say we all deserve hell, but by the grace of God, He saved us through Jesus Christ. And I said, BTW, by the way, I don't wish any ill toward you, in spite of you wishing it for me. I have said from nearly the start of our discussion, I just want you to come to the truth. As far as I'm concerned, you are simply a casualty of a spiritual war we are having with the devil, who's our real enemy. See Ephesians 6. I just want you to think on these things, and don't take my word for it. I provided the tools, the resources. Now it is up to you to check them out. This is another reason I am ending our discussion. It is clear to me that our discussion has become fruitless since you are still presenting me with your nonsensical interpretations and you refuse to hear me out or check me out on anything. You just assume that I'm wrong and you're right in spite of the evidence that says otherwise. Also, I do have homework from college that I have been neglecting to answer these posts or have been neglecting to answer these posts. I said that kind of weird. I mean that I've been neglecting my homework and I've been neglecting it for me answering the post is what I mean by it. So I will not respond back after this. I do respond one more time, in spite of me saying that, because he does make another reply. And when I respond to him not to reply back, he does an email, because I guess he just really wants the last word. But we'll get into that in a minute. I can see from my notifications that you replied to one of my videos on my channel. He did. But nothing bad. He just said he thinks I need a longer video. I'm not going to go into that one, though. And I explained to him that on average, the average YouTube video is about an hour long. Mine's usually an hour, on average, is usually an hour to hour and a half. Occasionally, some of my videos are over 3 hours, but that's the exception. And I mentioned that, and he hasn't replied back to that. But that was the only time that mentioned on the video. I guess he must have clicked on my channel and decided to watch a little bit of my video. I can see from my notifications that you applied to one of my videos on my channel, so I will be checking that out. 16. I don't have to declare a false victory. It is clear that I had won. You bringing that up, suggesting that you know everyone is going to know that I did. However, something much greater is at stake than simply winning a debate. What's at stake is truth, and I hope one day you find it. I really do. Okay. He decided he really wants the last word, right? So he comes in, says, "What version are you looking at Hebrew? Use symbolic meanings of yam and yom. Yom. It's supposed to be yom, and this right here doesn't exist. And maybe you can figure out what was said. As far as Hebrew rules of language, the ones you go by were created after the fact. He's missing the point. Those are the same rules that were created that was there whenever Moses wrote Genesis. So it doesn't matter if they were created after their evolutionary developments from other languages or whatnot. It's how the original writers of Scripture would have understood when they were writing the text. That's the point. So he's missing the point again. It's hilarious. You ignore, you prove my point. On this very first response about Bereshith, yet continuing to state you did so for different reasons, therefore it is different. Only reason I am not responding in bullet-point fashion is that I only have a phone to respond from. Okay, he's saying he's only have a phone is limited, but you can still click on links and stuff like that, even if you are responding to the phone. But either way, all right. No, I didn't. I've explained it several times. It's a nuanced translation. It does not come from house, for one thing. So this is completely wrong. This is completely bogus. It's a bogus interpretation or a bogus thing on his part. He's missing the point of what I was saying. It's I'm doing it because of the rules of Hebrew, because that's how Moses would have understood it when he wrote it. All right. Going into it, I said, okay, I respond one more time. This is the last time I respond. I am trying to end this as polite as I can. I have other stuff to get to, including my homework. Please stop replying. I don't want to deal with any more of this nonsense. I've got far more important things to do, and we keep going around in circles. I've already explained this to you. These rules were created at the time Genesis was written, so it wouldn't even matter if these rules were different, allegedly different. It would only matter if Moses wrote according to these rules, and he did. It isn't a version per se. Talking about his question about the version. It is just the printed Hebrew scriptures of the Old Testament. In fact, I can show it to you. Where'd it go? This is it right here. This has actually got both the Hebrew and the Greek in it. It's got the Hebrew here. And I go directly back to the Hebrew. This is actually the printed Hebrew text. And this is the printed Greek text right here. That's the printed Greek text. So it's got Hebrew on one side, the Old Testament, and the Greek New Testament on the other. And that's what I use. All right. the version per se. It is just a printed Hebrew scriptures of the Old Testament. I don't need your nonsensical interpretations that are subjective to you and to you alone. I actually practice exegesis. If Moses wrote something, then I want to know what he meant about it, not that what someone thinks he meant by it by using some imaginary code that are reading back into the text. Again, you are in error because you fail to know Hebrew. If you want to debate me, then please learn some Hebrew. You've lost. Just consider this a lesson learned. You want to go against scholars, you better have some facts along with you, or no one will take you seriously. Now, he'll question my scholarship just because I disagree with him. And I guess he questions all scholars because all scholars disagree with him. Learn Hebrew and get back to me. I have already explained an inseparable preposition to you and even offered sources, examples, and explanations, and you still think there is some kind of pictographical meaning that's not there. We are talking about nuances in translations that has nothing to do with the alleged origin of the letter. If you refuse to believe this, then I can't help you. I can't force you to believe the truth. You appear to be self-deluded. Again, I'm not insulting him. I'm talking about the situation. To me, as he is arguing his position, he appears to be really deluded, self-deluded, like he's choosing this delusion and forcing it upon his way of thinking. And it appears to be chosen. He's choosing it. No one's choosing in this forum. He's choosing it in himself. If this is the case, then I can't help you. I've done all I can. I am not going to continue forever on this nonsense. I have already proven you wrong too many times over, which I did. I'm going to leave you now, but not before I cite a famous scholar by the name of D.A. Carson. All right, this is the book I'm fixing to cite, Exegetical Fallacies by D.A. Carson. He wrote a book titled Exegetical Fallacies, 1996, and dedicated an entire chapter in his book called Word Study Fallacies, and identified a fallacy called semantic obsolescence, which he said concerning it, here the interpreter assigns to a word in his text a meaning that the word in question used to have in earlier times, but that is no longer found within the live semantic range of the word. That meaning, in other words, is semantically obsolete, page 35. Basically, he applied this to words because words can have an earlier meaning that may not have now, but you can apply it also to the origin of a letter in Hebrew, like it comes from this language or this language, and it originally meant this over here. But it doesn't mean that now. It doesn't mean that when Moses wrote Genesis, he was not applying that interpretation, that meaning, because he did not know that meaning, and that meaning no longer was applicable to what it means at the time he was writing Genesis. And then I wrote, just think on these things, but for now, I'm done. Blessings. And this time I was completely done. Well, he wanted to get the last word in, so he did this. You were done from the start. Okay, fourth grade, are we? He ends it really immature-ish. I wasn't done from the start. His position was just an indefensible position. You couldn't defend his position. No matter how hard you try, you can never defend his position. Just because modern Hebrew wishes for the truth to go away with assigning 11 of 22 letters as prefixes changes nothing other than their prefix word meaning for a single letter. This right here is pure speculation. He's commenting on the intent of ancient Hebrew writers that he does not have not a shred of proof for. He has no evidence at all that they did this. They were trying to hide the meanings. Why would they hide meanings? If it had that meaning, then they were right according to it. But they didn't. So this is pure speculation. He has no evidence for it at all. Oh, the irony, he says. Funny, you pretend to be a scholar, though clearly not. In order to be a scholar, I guess I have to agree with everything he says. So I guess Michael Brown isn't a scholar either. Or James White, or anybody else that specializes. I mean, really. For start with, scholars are notoriously disagreeing with themselves, each other, and even other people. But there are certain things common among all scholars of every stripe, And I'm going to tell you something. No serious scholar would entertain this theory. None. Anyone who's trained in Hebrew, anyone who studied Hebrew would not have seriously entertained it. So he ends it very ad hominem. He attacks me personally, thinks that I'm not a scholar because I disagree with him, when in fact I actually am a scholar, and I don't agree with him because the evidence and facts don't support his position. He's clearly in error. He clearly lost. But you saw, as we kept going through the post, you noticed the desperation. He kept getting more desperate with his replies. More ad hominem, more reaching, and more speculative. And he gets to here, and he starts his reply 4th grade level, ends at 2nd grade level. I would love to tell you that this guy progressed in his thinking, but he doesn't. He actually regresses in his thinking in the end. This is very different from that one person that I was reviewing last time on this series, When Skeptics Respond, because he progressed in his thinking. This guy isn't progressing in his thinking. Again, I'm not saying that you have to agree with everything I believe to progress in your thinking. You can progress in your thinking if you're just open-minded to it, if you're checking information out, if you're learning as you're discussing this with other people and that sort of thing. That's progressing in your thinking. This guy isn't progressing. He's regressing. He's actually going backwards. Plus, as he was replying to me, he was getting more and more desperate. Well, I told you it was going to be weird. It's going to be weird. It's going to be unusual. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Have you ever encountered anyone this is the first time I've ever encountered this kind of skeptic. I've never encountered this kind of skeptic. Certainly have never had a conversation like this. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. I mean, it was just weird and bizarre. He was just spouting out stuff that had made no sense at all to me. If you encounter someone like this, please let me know in the comment section. I would love to know if you've encountered people like this, if you encounter people online like this. How do you deal with them? How do you discuss this stuff with them? I mean, this is really weird. Now, there were times in the debate, in the discussion, I admit I used a little bit more stronger language than I normally do. And like I said, I was getting some of that from Dr. Brown, because he does so in his video. And he does use stronger language like that, but I normally don't. But it did seem situationally to me that he was choosing that path, and the more and more he replied to me, the more self-deluded he seemed to be to me. Okay, don't forget to tell me in the comment section when you want, or in the comment section what you think about all this. This was a very weird discussion that I had with this guy. It might not be every week that I have a video. I would love to produce one out every week, but because of school, me trying to get behind or get caught up, and because I also got my mom's funeral this week and I have new nights again, it's going to be one of those things where you're just going to have to be patient with me, please, and I will try to produce a video whenever I am able to. But this has been interesting and weird all at the same time. But no matter who the skeptic is, no matter what the situation is, it is always important to me to keep you in the know, okay? Because we must always learn the facts the critics don't want you to know. Thank you for listening.